you had worked with Mr. Ashby previously, of course. It's a tremendous project, Coming Home. And I wanted you to give me a sense of what made him so unique as a filmmaker, and what made his sets different from the other filmmakers you've worked with.
Well, Hal, I have to say that when I was a young actor looking for the people to continue my career, and I got, of course, with Midnight Cowboy, I burst onto the scene, but I'd been around doing work on stage for a while and some television, but all of a sudden people recognized me from this great film, and which was directed by John Schlesinger at the top of his game, and he was a very great director, and so we had this great success. And then the other people at that time, there were as actors were coming forth, like Dustin Hoffman prior to myself, just one film prior.
Yeah,
he was a phenomenon when he came forth, and as it is today, there's discoveries almost every year, and I was one of those with Midnight Cowboy. And then there were directors as well that were suddenly coming to the fore at that time, and one of the ones that everyone had great regard for was Hal Ashby. And you're always thinking, well, maybe I can work with Hal one day, And as it turned out, we would see each other every once in a while, but I never really got to know him well, but always had this great feeling about Hal. And then when we finally came down to it with Coming Home, I pursued the role that I finally did get, but they were considering me for a role that Bruce Dern finally did.
Yeah.
And so I was in discussions with Hal Ashby, with Waldo Salt, who was the writer of Midnight Cowboy as well as Coming Home, and Jerry Hellman, who was the producer of Midnight Cowboy as well as Coming Home. But this is the first time I would be working with Hal Ashby. And Hal was the most, what can I say about him? Of course, when you meet somebody that you admire, there's always a little intimidation. You're deeply honored to be with them. You're hoping that things go well with your collaboration, and you're looking for the ways you connect. And with Hal and Hal was very quiet, didn't say a whole bunch of stuff, was, I would say, shy of a lot of attention, but he was extremely bright and full of good humor, a unique sense of humor, a little on the dark side maybe, but really was really funny, and he was a very loving man.
Yeah.
He cared for everybody. He cared especially if he was very sensitive to people who were hurting, and very sensitive generally. So working with Hal, as I got to know him more and more, we became collaborative in Coming Home. He would come to me with suggestions early in the morning, and I would respond with some of the things I was sitting up at night thinking about, and we'd put things together in the scenes that we shot on a daily basis. And because of the circumstances, a script that wasn't quite finished, we had this need to do it, but then we had the joy of doing it. I would always be happy to see Hal coming toward me, and I think that it was mutual, and we would pepper this piece with lots of ironic humor and passion.
Yeah.
So we seemed to work well together. We were, as they say in our world out here, we were good chemistry for each other. We had fun working together, and when that happens, it's always a good sign. And we were able to say and do things together that I think were daring sometimes, and unusual always.
Yeah.
So that's why Coming Home was the way it was, and it bore his signature very beautifully. I thought
it really did. It really, and all of his films, and all the qualities that you just described, that you found in him, the loving nature, the concern about others, and the kind of the warm heart. You can see that in his work, and it's a beautiful legacy of work. That's why it's very exciting that we're getting to see the previously unseen cut of Looking to Get Out the way that he wanted it shown. But tell me about when you first received the script, or this project came to you. What were your thoughts about it?
Which script?
Looking to Get Out.
Looking to Get Out was born of, it had a little bit of an interesting history. My brother, Chip Taylor, and he changed his name from James Wesley Voight to Chip Taylor when he got a record contract at 16 with King Records in Harlem. He was a young singer-songwriter, and they were looking for a Rick Nelson type. And in those days, they thought about changing names. When I came along, I didn't want to change my name, and none of my peers did either. But at that time, they were still in that kind of thought that, you change your name. And since they were looking for a Rick Nelson type, they wanted a Rick Nelson name, and Chip Taylor was what they came up with. So my brother had this name, and he had some success. He had a very big success with a song called Wild Thing. He wrote Wild Thing.
Wow.
And actually his demo was what the Trogs used exactly note for note. If you played Chip's demo record and you played back to back with the Trogs' interpretation of it, you would see there was absolutely no difference whatsoever. So he could have had a hit on that if it had been distributed and advertised properly. But anyway, that's the way things go in the business.
Yeah.
And he had this huge hit, and anyway, we were a close family. I have a brother that's a volcanologist who's rather world known, and we were all three very close growing up, and continue to be through our adulthood. But anyway, Chip passed me 33 pages of a script that was being written by his buddy and a buddy of mine too. His name was Al Schwartz. And Al was a character in our lives, a very interesting guy. Used to be a stunt man, was a Korean War veteran, gunner in B-25s, and then had this stint in the music business where he was managing different acts and stuff. He was a very interesting guy, and a guy I liked very much. Had a good sense of humor. I guess that's part of maybe an identifying factor in my friendships. We do a lot of laughing, but he presented Al's 33 pages to me, and the 33 pages, he said, there's something to this, and I looked at it, and there was indeed some kind of signature, some originality, and something in the dialogue that was very special. And I looked at it, and the story wasn't there yet, and so I encouraged him to keep working at it, and as it turned out, I worked with him and finally became a co-writer, really, because I would work with him on a weekly basis until it was finished. And then we couldn't get it made, and I was doing this really for Al because I thought it was, I thought he should get some attention for this work. Finally, there's a story connected to this, but I at one point said, I'm going to get this thing made. I'm going to take it to my friend Hal Ashby. And Hal liked it, and we set off to do it. And then we had all sorts of drama in the making of it. And in the final stages, Hal was not able to finish the film. So there was some damage done to the film, and it came out in a crippled form. So unfortunately, nobody ever saw the film in a proper state.
So the studio took and did their own cut of it. That was
they interceded. They said 15 minutes have to come out, and Hal walked away, and they did the 15 minutes, and it was, it was not helpful. And then I tried to fix it, but couldn't fix it. And if you take 15 minutes out of almost anything, you're going to hurt it. But in this case, the film they had a date, and they had to make the date, and I understood their concerns, but also the damage had been done. So,
wow.
So we didn't have a happy ending to our journey until most recently, when we discovered that Hal had cut the film before his passing and had taken this cut and given it to UCLA
without telling
anyone. Now there's backstory to that. I understand all the motivations. I can figure it all out, but it really was like a message in a bottle sent out to sea. and that was lost until a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now, when a young Scottish writer by the name of Nick Dawson, who had fallen in love with Hal's work, and he was 26 years old, but quite a lot more mature than 26 years old would indicate. Yeah. And he called me up and he said, "John, I'd like to interview you. I'm doing a book on Hal Ashby. I'd like to get some of your insights." And I said, "I'd sure be delighted to talk about Hal." And then he showed up at one point, and he actually showed up. I mean, there's even another aspect to the story that's quite unique. And he said, he called me from San Francisco and said, "I'm in San Francisco." This was a couple of months after he talked to me initially, and he said, "I'm up here in San Francisco. I'm coming down a couple of days." I said, "That's great." He said, "May I bring with me Hal's daughter?" I said, "I didn't know he had a daughter." He said, "Well, he did have a daughter, and she was trying to get in touch with him during her lifetime. They almost met several times, but they never did meet. But it would be nice for her to hear stories about her dad." I said, "Isn't that wonderful?" I said, "Look, I'm very sorry I didn't know about this, because I was close enough to Hal that I definitely would have been able to get them together. So let's have her come along. We'll have some fun." And they came, and she turned out to be this young woman, Lee Ashby McManus, and she's an older woman, and she's now, she's not a kid, and she's had a couple of children herself, and she's a terrific gal. And it would have been so nice for Hal to have had that connection, but there were reasons in his background why that would have been a difficult thing, and maybe the whole story may come out one day. But anyway, they came down and they started talking about how much they loved Looking to Get Out, and I said, and I asked Lee, I said, "Why was it?" She said, "It's my favorite film." I said, "Why is it your favorite film?" She said, "Because I think the girl in it, the little girl at the end, who was played by Angelina Jolie as a little baby, 4 years old, was me." And I thought about it, and I said, "Yes, it's very possible that it was you." So I remember the discussions we had, and we were thinking of going with a little boy, but Hal wanted it to be a girl. And so I remembered those conversations. And then Nick Dawson said it's one of my favorite films as well. And I said, "Well, where did you see it, Nick? Did you see it in DVDs, or what would you see?" He said, "No, I saw the cut that he left UCLA." I said, "What?" He said, "He left UCLA a version, and that's the one I saw." And when I heard that, the first question I asked him, I said, "Tell me how it begins. Can you tell me how it begins? Yeah. Describe the opening." Because we had several versions, and Hal had shot a lot of stuff beyond the script in the beginning, and I never thought when we were working on it that stuff applied. I thought we could have started where we started in the script, which is Alex picking up the car, but we never got a version like that that started in the proper way and was edited tightly and all of this. And I knew cut for cut what it was, each cut. That's one thing I can remember. If I see, especially one of my films, I know every cut, and I know what's on the cutting room floor as well. So I said, he described it to me, and I said, "That's a new version." And then I said, "Well, let's go see it." So we called up right then, that day. I said, "Let's call up UCLA and let's go down and take a look." So I said, "Let me call Al Schwartz, my buddy, and let's see," because he'd love to see it. And sure enough, we went to see it, and we sat there, and I said, "Let's put up a reel." We put up the reel, and the kids at UCLA said, "Whoa, this is a great film. We play this every once in a while. We love this film." I said, "Is that right?" Huh. So I said, "Let's see the first reel." So we looked at the first reel, and sure enough, it was a new cut, something I hadn't seen before, and it was very well done. The first time I had seen that section as well done as it was, Then I said, "Let's put up the second reel. So we put up the second reel, and sure enough, every cut was, terrific. When each scene had been adjusted, too. It wasn't like I was watching. Some sequences had been in the original, but for whatever reason, the build from scene to scene was never right. You'd get thrown off here and there. This one just kept us going, So he touched every little sequence, went back and recut, found other takes, made strong differences in the cutting, and it all looks very natural. You would never know that it wasn't shot just exactly that way. So I saw the two reels, and I was frightened that I would come to the third or fourth or fifth reel and the thing would fall apart. But I said, look, let's not spoil this because it's fragile. It's just one piece of film. It's a rough cut. It's a work print. Let's show it to Warner Brothers, who owns it now, and let's see if we can get a DVD made of this. But let's see it in that circumstance. Let's invite everybody and have a little screening. So we invited some of the Warner Brothers people. They said they'd like to see it. We invited the kids from UCLA and a couple of others. Burt Young joined us. I couldn't get in touch with Annie at that time, but our producer Bob Chaffel was there, and we sat and we saw it, and we saw it reel for reel. Every reel held up right through to the end credits, and it was just wonderful for me to see this creation of ours. And so Al was overjoyed, Bert was overjoyed, I was overjoyed, and everybody in the room was happy with the film. So it was an exciting moment for us all. And then immediately Warner Brothers said, we're going to release a DVD on this. So that became, and by the way, Nick Dawson was there, and Lee Ashby McManus was there as well. So we had a wonderful, it was a real celebration, and Nick, and then Nick called me a couple of weeks ago actually, and said, he's going to have this. He's got the Sarasota Film Festival, so we arranged for them to have a copy of the DVD. With the first copy, they'll be showing it in the theater. I don't think they'll show the film. I think they've cleaned up the DVD, so we'll have a projected DVD. I think now maybe
it's
the film.
It's a high definition transfer, DVD. I believe. Yeah.
So it'll be a very nice piece, and it'll be the first time. It's a premiere.
First time. That's amazing. That's amazing. So tell me about this journey. It seems like you've come full circle. So many have come full circle with this process.
Yeah.
It's almost poetic in a way. What has this meant to you?
It's a big deal for me because of many reasons. But one is that this film, which was not received well, will have its proper place in Hal's legacy.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful. It is a Hal Ashby film. It's a very, very good Hal Ashby film. This will take its place now, and for me too. I like this film very, very much, and it's one of those films. It's a comedy, obviously, and at the base, and it's got a lot of other stuff in it as well, but it has some thrilling stuff and very extraordinary stuff filmically, and in the acting department, and there's stuff that's kind of classic stuff within this film. See,
yeah.
So I have a feeling that people will be walking around saying some of the words from this film because the language is very vivid and fun, and also it fulfills my legacy as well.
Yeah.
So it becomes a portrait that I can be very proud of.
Well, as a film,
and I think the same thing is true of Anne, and the same thing is true of Burt Young. Certainly, Burt Young is wonderful in this piece.